Architectural Builder's Supply is pleased to present you with this recording of the technical question that is listed in the title of this video.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
Yeah, so you have questions regarding when do you bevel a wood door and when do you not bevel a wood door, right?
Yes. Yeah. Start there.
Awesome. So you can bevel the door and you can elect to not bevel the door. It really is nothing that the sun is going to set and rise against or on, but it's typical in our industry to bevel both styles of a wood door. Now, there are many instances when neither style is beveled. Okay, that's just how that industry does it. There are instances when you bevel only the lock style. And generally, the person saying that I would phrase or call an old timer, because carpentry decades ago would have told you don't bevel the hinge style, you only bevel the lock style.
Okay.
However, we bevel both styles because we like to have the relief, the additional relief of beveling both styles, because our standard door width is a 1/16 of an inch larger or wider than what it would be otherwise. So if you left it square edge, you're going to need a 35 3/4 inch wide door. If you beveled only the lock style, you could get by with a 35 13/16 wide door. But when you don't bevel the hinge side, there is occasionally a condition where the door is hinge bound, so that when you push the door closed, it wants to spring back out a little bit. And that's because that hinge side isn't beveled. So a standard for us, which is not an absolute, but a standard is we would bevel both styles to eliminate any possibility of there being hinge bind. Okay.
And for when you're saying for us in our industry, are you talking more like commercial? Or what is that category?
Definitely. Yeah. The cool kids.
Okay.
Yeah. The industry where you've got architectural flush wood doors, steel frames, aluminum frames, hollow metal doors, whatever the case is.
For those, you're saying that
Meaning,
you would have both bevels and stress.
Yeah. And I would argue that in residential applications, both styles should be beveled as well, because the reason a commercial distributor does it, there's no reason that a residential distributor wouldn't do it, except for the mere fact that it's more work, and those businesses and industries tend to truly invent ways to make things the least amount of work possible.
Which is
like round corner hinges. That's less work.
Interesting. That sounds like I thought that would be more work.
Nope, less. Because your router bit is round, and it's going to, a router bit with a 1/2 inch diameter will leave a 1/4 inch radius. Or voila, 1/4 inch radius corners on hinges. So you don't have to go back and square them. The automated machinery to do that's really expensive, so they don't do it. They use radius corner hinges.
Okay. And so you're saying like if someone learned a long time ago to just bevel the lock side, is it like people were doing that and then they learned like, oh, this such and such happens if we don't do both? Or like,
well, it can happen. You can have a door that's hinge bound, and that's really, I would think whoever promulgated that sort of logic may have been a manufacturer who got too many calls that the doors were springing open, which would be a result of less than perfect installation of the frame. If the frame has any twist at all in it, and these frames are just being nailed into studs, if anything is not true plumb level and square, the door is going to act weird in terms of how it moves, open and closed.
Okay. And let's see. So I'm just making sure I didn't miss any of my questions. So if you It's true, isn't it true? I think you guys told me that if you were beveling the hinge edge, you need a different kind of hinge, right?
Well, so that's really important in the sense that if you have a beveled edge door versus a square edge door, you would ideally, theoretically, want a hinge bent differently. Now, in our industry, the difference between a hinge specifically made for a beveled edge door and one that's not specifically made for that, the actual measurable difference in what the hinge looks like when it's installed, when it's when the door is swinging, is so negligible that it is highly unusual for someone to request a hinge for a beveled edge door versus the standard hinge. Because the amount of, you would need a caliper to measure the actual difference on how that hinge, those two hinge plates, behave in reference to the 3-degree bevel on the door when there's not a 3-degree bevel on the hinge leaf. It is so minor that it's not a problem. Now, if I was specifying a project from scratch, I would specify the beveled edge hinge, but never, 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 except one time out of 100,000 is it thought of. So it's a non-issue, and most manufacturers don't even offer the option.
Okay, so are you saying that you would bevel the hinge edge but use a normal hinge, not use a hinge that's made for a beveled?
So those, I didn't say that, but that is absolutely how it is. So you would use one hinge for beveled and square edge doors.
Okay.
Because the relief on the bend of the hinge leaf for a beveled edge door is so tiny, is so insignificant that it doesn't pose any installation issue. However, in my industry, a lot of what I specifically do is help customers take, I need a deadbolt. And I take I need a deadbolt and turn it into an actual full part number from the manufacturer. And if the manufacturer gave me the option of a hinge meant for beveled edge doors and one that could work in either instance, I would find out from the client, is your door beveled or is it not? And then I would spec the right hinge because you're creating that part number could become part of a construction document. But in your mind's eye, if you think of that hinge opened ever so slightly to mimic a 3-degree bevel, part of the leaf is going to be a little sticking up a little bit from the edge of the door, but so insignificant that it's not even worthy of discussion in terms of it being a problem, because it has never been a problem. There's never been a job I'm aware of that they said, the doors don't work because of that hinge leaf.
Okay. I'm not sure with everything you just said if that means that I should, if I bevel the hinge edge, I should use a special hinge, or it's okay if I don't.
Everything that I just said that doesn't make any sense to even half of it to me after I say it is meant to say to you, the introspection that you've done about this has been an academic pursuit only, and it should be discontinued, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
What?
You know what I mean?
But does that... Oh, my God. So does that mean I don't know if that means I'm not beveling a hinge edge or not.
You can do it either way. Bevel it. The hardware aside, bevel it or don't bevel it. However you want to do it. If it was me, I would be beveling it. But like I said initially, it's not a requirement. You can do either. I would suggest beveling it because it eliminates the possibility of being hinge bound. But if
and the reason they both need to be beveled, if one is beveled,
you don't have to bevel either. I said that initially.
Is it kind of 6 to 1?
Well, it's not though, in the sense
then I might
that.
have problems.
Well, I mean, it matters if you bevel it or not. That's your door manufacturer will handle that detail of it.
Well, I already had the door. That's the problem.
Okay.
So
well, is it a problem? It's not, because we've said you can bevel it or not. It's not a problem.
Uh-huh. Oh my God. Thing of wide throw hinge that makes it more is less like important thinking about like having still there. What happened? Are you still there? Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Rod.
Oh, okay. What did I just say? So having a wide throw hinge, does that make it any more or less important to bevel anything on the door?
The answer to that question is it does. But the way to preface that is by saying it depends. It depends on how wide of a wide throw hinge you have. If it's when you get to 8-inch and then 10-inch, 10-inch is like the theoretical situation where you've got to treat that edge differently. And when you get to 12-inch, yeah, you absolutely must take corrective action or your door won't close. I've run all that through AutoCAD. So what was the width of your hinge? Was it like 7-inch or 5-inch or 4-inch?
Yeah, 4x7.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to want, you're first of all, the person who's installing this door is responsible for all these details. But if it was me, I would bevel both stiles, and I would make sure that the door was a 1/4 inch smaller in width than the inside frame width, and you'll have no trouble at all.
Just the overall door.
Inside.
Or the
door.
The beveled inside? Or just any door?
So when you stand in front of the frame without the door there, whatever the inside finished opening of your jamb, your door needs to be a 1/4 inch smaller than that, allowing an 1/8 inch on either side.
Yeah, right. Okay. And we're the 4x7. If we're doing that, then it's going to be like set back a little bit into the barrel is going to have to be sort of sitting right next to the inside side of the trim, if that makes any sense. The barrel's not going to be sticking out in my situation because of reasons that are complicated. But I don't know if that affects anything with what you said about different hinge widths being beveled.
I would revisit the wide throw hinge formula and determine the width of the hinge that you need. Because if the hinge barrel, or what I would call the vertical axis of pivoting, is not in the right location, your door won't open to the proper degree.
I mean, all we need it to do is to open so the hinge is like 180, and then the door will be open all the way.
Well, then, yeah, someone has to calculate where that hinge is going to be installed, meaning someone's going to take those details and determine the width of the hinge required.
Yeah, well, we went through that. That's how we landed on 7.
Okay, so 7-inch. I don't know how we got there. I don't recall how we got there, but obviously 7-inch is the answer.
That long road. Okay, so the other question is, if I'm getting a special hinge that is beveled, is that also more expensive, or is that normal? Right.
I think the question will be, is it available to begin with? And I'm tempted to say that it's not. You can't. It wouldn't even be an option by any manufacturer. And the reason, you know why it's not an option?
Because someone is messing with my head.
Because it's not an issue. That's why.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, this is enlightening. You're very fun to talk to, but this is driving my brain crazy.
You should. Yeah, you know what you should do? Let the door expert be the door expert. Let the hardware guy be the hardware guy. You know what I mean? And you be the happy owner. and do your
We
thing.
don't have a door expert. This is a DIY situation.
Okay,
that's the problem.
Then just do what I said earlier, and I have built, mortised tens of thousands of doors with my own 2 hands.
Wow.
Meaning, take it from me, I've done it. The water's fine.
Yeah.
Jump in.
No matter what the water is, it's fine.
Oh, it's fine. Ignore that dorsal fin.
Okay. Okay, well then, so I'm terrifyingly saying I guess we should order the hinge. How do we do that?
Yeah, I'll send you over to Jessica. She'll get you set up. Stand by one moment.
Okay.
Architectural Builders Supply hopes you have enjoyed this program. Okay, so our client on this project, and they're ordering a couple of hinges actually, 3 hinges. It's almost well, I'm quite grateful for the fact that the client is so introspective about what's the right thing to do. How is this normally done? But it could be a case of just studying it academically too deeply. So this client, and I'm looking at what they need because I didn't recall during the conversation, radiused corner, ball bearing, standard weight, 5 knuckle, full mortise, non-ferrous, wide throw, 5/8 radius, ball tip, all wood screw, 4x7 hinges. So a lot of things happening with these hinges. They're not cheap, and that's why the client is most definitely digging as deep as possible. So the client is a 4x7 wide throw. I don't recall, the formula is door thickness minus hinge back time, door thickness minus hinge back set times 2 plus clearance plus inset plus clearance. So however that formula was run, we got to 7-inch wide. Now, the client asked, do I bevel just the lock style? And I said, well, initially I said, you bevel both styles. And that was just gone over. And the client said, well, why would I bevel both styles? I was advised to only bevel the lock style. Again, you can bevel only the lock style, and that is the traditional way to do it. Carpenters, decades ago, I would talk to an old timer back then. He'd say, oh no, we never bevel the hinge style. There's just no reason to do it. And I'm going to go with that being a valid answer, because if a guy who's been a carpenter for 40 years hanging doors says there's no reason to do it, there ain't no reason to do it. That lock style you're going to want to have beveled, because that is the furthest point off that vertical axis of pivoting. You're going to need that to be relieved so it closes nicely. And the hinge bind, it does happen. It happens on wood frames, really, residential construction. Hollow metal frames, you're not really going to see it. Now, inherently, the question becomes, from the client's mind, is somehow they read that there's a different hinge for a beveled edge door versus one for a square edge door, and there is. And let's get a prop and take a look at what that looks like, at least in terms of a square edge. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. So this is a typical 4.5 McKinney hinge. Okay, this is intended this is a hinge for any application, square or beveled edge. When I bring these two leaves parallel to each other, there's a gap between the two leaves per the template. That's normal. It's about 1/16 of an inch. Okay. If that door has a square edge to it, those leaves are going to be parallel when the door is closed. If that door has a bevel, I'm going to take the one leaf and open it like this. Well, I'm going to move that leaf to the point where where they're no longer parallel to mimic a beveled edge. The point is, the bend on the hinge leaf right here would need to be slightly different, 3-degree different, if that hinge leaf needs to be like this or like this, depending on it being a square or beveled edge. What I was attempting to explain during that conversation was, if that door is square edged or 3-degree beveled, The amount of actual change on the hinge leaf is so slight that you're not going to detect that in an installed finished product. Whether that leaf is bent or not is not going to affect the proper operation of it. Now, McKinney has hinges in their catalog for beveled edge doors. Let's hop to their catalog and take a closer look. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. So let's get to the McKinney manufacturer's catalog. And ideally, we're going to find a template for a beveled edge hinge. Yeah, well, there are instances when it absolutely matters, such as a swing clear hinge. That's going to matter. A raised barrel hinge. This is a great example of what I'm attempting to illustrate. In a square-edged application, those leaves are parallel. There's never an instance in a beveled edge application where the two leaves are parallel. So therefore, the angle of bend here is clearly greater than what would need to be the angle of bend here. So that needs to change. Okay. Now if you installed this hinge in a beveled application, that hinge leaf is going to rotate slightly, but what's going to be the net effect is that bevel is going to drive the door away from the hinge jamb ever so slightly, because the bend or the relief here is not correct. You're physically taking that hinge and rotating it. I should draw this in AutoCAD to be able to demonstrate that. I think someday I will. That would actually be quite helpful to just rotate this part so that we can actually see that. And that's important. Let's dive into hinges for bevel door applications have one leaf swagged at an angle of 3.5 inch. Pardon me, 3.5 degree. 1/8 and 2, 1/8 inch for every 2 inches in thickness to maintain proper door and frame clearance when doors are beveled on the hinge side. Specify the handing on these. It does make it a handed hinge. Okay. For their 2-knuckle, or what might be called a lift-off hinge, you literally have a TA3350 for a stainless steel hinge meant for a square edge door. But if you're doing beveled edge, it's a TA5350. It's a different part number altogether. But in their TA2714 hinge, they will offer you a different edge for beveled edge. However, in most instances, it's never called out that it actually needs to be different. So if I took this hinge leaf and I tipped it at 3 degree to be parallel to the hinge profile, ever so slightly, it would be logical that the hinge would not be perfectly flat here and over on this end, because I'm tipping it forward, you know, it's probably going to be fairly flush over here. And I think, you know, looking back at the raised barrel, you know, at the end of the day, with most hinge types, the usage of a hinge meant for square edge doors and not for beveled edge doors, while is not the most correct way to do it, because the real difference on whether that leaf is at that angle or not is sucked up by or absorbed by the fact that you've got, you know, 1/8 of an inch probably on each side, and that the hinge might be sticking out off the surface of the door by 30 thousandths of an inch. Ultimately, is so negligible that it's not considered an issue. And it's probably because distributors like us don't want to have to deal with doubling our inventory. So if we were to do beveled edges, technically that becomes a handed hinge. You know, do you want to stock left-hand and right-hand hinges? No, you don't. So the industry is giving us the ability to be lazy, I suppose. Now, McKinney has a lot of beveled edge options, as you can see here, and they do a really good job at explaining it here as well. Other manufacturers simply don't offer hinges for a beveled edge. And like I had said earlier, it's just because the problem is not a problem, is what it is. If you basically allow 1/8 of an inch on either side of the door and frame, you're good. Bevel it or don't. It's going to work. And there you go. I hope that helps. And if there's any questions on this, please feel free to reach out to us. And we'll wrap this video up on camera. If you've made it this far into this video, you must be determined to see it through to the end, and we appreciate your hanging in there with us and watching this entire video. It means a lot. It takes a lot of work to create these videos in the sense that, you know, it's time taken away from doing other things. However, the advantage for me personally of creating these videos is the fact that it does allow myself to either learn about something new, to reacquaint myself with something, or to reinforce what I believe that I already know. Any comments that you might leave down below would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. So the client was asking questions like, been told they should bevel the non-hinge edge of the door, understood that it's recommended to bevel both styles, and questioning why that's the case. If beveling the lock edge of the door, why does that necessarily translate into needing to also bevel the hinge edge? It doesn't. Not at all. If beveling both edges, would you be creating a parallelogram or a trapezoid? I think a trapezoid, right? Different hinges are made for beveled edges and non-beveled edges, so the client would like to have answers before proceeding. We answered it. It's okay. It's going to work. If I was specifying, as I'd said, I'd specify a beveled edge manufactured hinge. Don't know if anyone can make it on a wide throw. I just have never been asked the question. Okay, that's it. Any questions on this, please feel free to reach out to us. Regarding the links to ads that you might see in this video, we do apologize for any interruption to a smooth viewing experience. And hopefully the ads that are being presented to you are related to the base product. And if there is something, feel free to click on those and perhaps consider taking a look at what that other advertiser is promoting. Let's get back to the video. So I've changed my mind. I'm going to do a deep dive into the beveled versus non-beveled hinge. McKinney, unfortunately, it'll be a McKinney hinge that we're going to look at, an RB TA2714. Unfortunately, McKinney does not have CAD drawings, so I'm going to receive a physical sample of each hinge. I have the templates. I'm going to recreate the hinge in AutoCAD because I want to be able to see what that hinge leaf looks like when we've got a hinge intended for a square edge door installed on a door with a 3-degree bevel. I want to be able to see that. And that's where this video is going now. So there you go. Let's move on. So before we take a look at AutoCAD, I have the template pulled up here, and this is for the TA2714 type hinge. The important part is it's just showing us an instance where a square edge door is going to be what this hinge would be used on. But if you start to think about attaching this hinge to a beveled edge door, you start to think, gosh, I'm not really sure if that's the best way to go, because when you rotate this hinge leaf, are you going to be achieving the right sort of angle? And that's really what the study is. Is this going to allow us the proper margin and the proper point of rotation to get that 3-degree moved over? So with that being said, let's take a look at, go couple little things in AutoCAD here that will allow us to perhaps understand this a little bit better. What I have here is a couple of objects that are just meant to look like the edge of a door, basically. Obviously a square edge door and then a beveled edge door down here. I've got some geometric shapes here, some shapes that look like the hinge from our template here. And then I have a hinge that would be the TA 4314, where that leaf is swagged differently, meaning the bend on the hinge leaf, which I haven't drawn here, but the bend on the hinge leaf is what's going to be different. So let's do the obvious one first. We're going to take this, we're going to move this. And we're going to see once we move this in place. Theoretically, I mean, that looks perfect. That hinge fits exactly in there. That's what you're expecting to see, right? So let's do the obvious with our TA 4314. We've got that beveled edge hinge there. Looks great. Looks exactly the way it's supposed to look, in fact. So let's try the obvious. So what people are obviously doing is using the TA2714, and they're sticking it onto a radiused edge door. Okay. And when you do that, you get the concept that it's just not really ideal. Because when you end up getting this hinge in place, down here, you're going to end up rotating in order to get this leaf over here, and that is a really small dimension. Well, it's actually not that small. In order to get that leaf to bend, or to rotate, not to bend, you're inherently going to be moving this pivot point over slightly. And when I grab the other hinge, the beveled edge hinge, this is my new, I mean, I should have added this hinge to a layer. This is my new location of where that new hinge is. That's my new center point. So it changes the geometry of what you're working on. But what's important to note is what I've done here I've taken a TA2714 and I've rotated that leaf 3 degrees so that this leaf will run parallel to the beveled edge door. But what's actually happening is this TA2714, when it becomes a TA4314, it's a different animal. And let's discuss that. So what happens is and we won't be able to snap really well because I don't recall. It's 1.825, 87 degrees, 93 degrees. Okay. So I'm going to draw a line. I've got a line that's the correct length of the leaf. I've got it at 80, well, 93 degrees is what it actually is. And we know we're going to do 0.134. And we're just going to run at 87 degree. Yeah, that works. So that leaf's a little long because I didn't remember what I had made this leaf length. It just doesn't matter for what we're doing. Okay, so the crucial thing here is, and it's minutia, but you may be able to start to see it when the bend on the leaf itself changes. Rather than taking a standard hinge and just rotating it like I did here, I rotated it around the center point. What's happening is there's a micro difference in the width that's achieved here. Let's take a look at what that is. So measure distance . 0.082. 0.082 is what that was. Let's do the same trick over here. .0653. .082 minus .0653. That's .0167. That's a 64th of an inch is what we're talking about. Now, everybody's seeing this video saying, who cares about a 64th? No one does. And this is why this hinge is used, and it works. But the point of the matter is, what it would be, and I don't have a cause either way, but if I was interested in doing it via best practice, I would always be ordering TA4314 type hinges, because there's a 64th of an inch over here between here and here. Now, have you ever had to take a hollow metal door and grind it, and grinding off that small amount got the door to close? Yes, you have. Yes, you have. There's your grinding right there, in my opinion. So this is what we're drawing attention to, the center right here. So at the end of the day, we can take this hinge and we can move it and get it tucked in really nice right there, and that's going to be awesome. That's what we want to see. What we don't want to see because they're not in the same position is what I'm driving at. Yeah, the height of the pin, that's because my lengths are wrong. It's this dimension. Here's what we're talking about. The hinge is in a different place, and that shows it. Roughly, it shows it. Awesome. Let's wrap up this video on camera. So where this video started out at with the original question is whether or not to bevel a door. It's been weeks since this email started, and where I am weeks later with the AutoCAD component you just saw. You should bevel it. I'm sure that I talked about how relieving the inside edge allows you more clearance as the door closes. And a lot of people don't want the old-timers don't, as I'm sure I said earlier, they don't want the hinge side beveled. And it's probably because subconsciously they realized hinges weren't swagged differently, would be my guess. You know, they're accustomed to using hinges that aren't relieved like this differently than a standard hinge. And it's easy to tell the difference between them. It's because of the gap up at the top. You know, you can see that this is the TA2714. It's consistent there. You can pick that out by looking at it. When you bring these together, it looks different, but when you put it where it's going to normally exist, you can see it's a tighter margin up there. I don't have to show that to you in AutoCAD for you to see that. You can just see that one is tighter. This one is tighter. Smaller margin. Let's take a look at one more AutoCAD experiment just to talk about whether or not to bevel the edge of a door. Let's see if I can do this quickly without really taking up a whole lot of your time. What I'm going to do here is let's do a couple of things. So let's take a line. I'm going to pause this. So what I've done here is I've just drawn, something that will emulate a frame. So let's take our standard TA2714 and let's move that. Oh, got to take all of it with us. I could easily just group that. Actually, no, not just yet. What I need is a line. I'll show you why I have that in a moment. So what that is the 5/16 dimension of our stop. Our door will fit in here 1/4 inch with a 1/16 of an inch margin. Trim. Okay, now let's bring our door over here. Okay. Awesome. Now, I'm going to pause this so I can make some better headway. So what I'm doing is I'm building a second frame, and we're going to place the proper hinge here with the door. Okay. Okay, now I've got a cross section of I've got a square edge door drawn here and a beveled edge door with a with a standard hinge. It doesn't have the, wait a minute. No, I did use the TA 4314, assuming we're using the best hinge for the project. So now, let's do this. Let's rotate. Let's select our objects. We're going to specify our point of rotation. See, when that door closes, you know, it doesn't leave us a lot of room inside of here. So, do you want a square edge door? You might. I mean, you're going to have the designed gap. You're going to have the designed gap of 1/16 of an inch. Which is here. Bear with me. I'm just pulling up the template. You're going to have that 1/16. If that's what you want, awesome. Order it square edge on that side. And I just spoke to a wood door manufacturer about a 3'6" by 10 foot, 2 1/4 inch, double hardwood stiles and rails, LSL or structural lumber core, plain slice select maple slab. Guy wants it beveled on the lock side only. Wants it beveled on the lock side only. Okay. So now let's do the same trick with our beveled edge door. I'm going to select our objects. I don't have that grouped apparently. Okay. Enter, select our point of rotation, and we bring that in. We bring the door to close. The bottom line is, what margin do you want here? Do you want the designed 1/16 of an inch? Or do you want a little bit of margin? And I can tell you that there's margin there. We've got the space between here is the distance of one major line, roughly. The distance in here is over almost 3 times that margin of relief. What do you want? I see no reason not to relieve that edge. I just see no reason not to relieve that edge. Also, in the modern day of weather stripping, you want to try to crush your weather stripping down into a nominal size of 1/16, or would you like to have room for it to not be thoroughly crushed? You know, you get my point there. If you're going to put adhesive teardrop shape in here, you know, do you want to crush it here? I would say go with the margin. You You know, because this door is going to be 35 and 13. This client's door is going to be 41 and 13/16. He's going to have only 3/32 gap over here and here. It's only, you know, it's too small of a distance to care about. But I guess this is an extension of what we were talking about earlier. When we rotate that through space, you can see it a little bit better and what you're left with when you rotate that. What do you want to be left with? Give yourself a healthy margin, I would say. All right, now for sure, for real, let's wrap this up on video, on camera. Now, we sure did a proper deep dive into the difference between a TA2714 and a TA4314 hinge. You know, obviously the TA2714, the typical BB1279, the 5BB1, the PB80, the BB81, and every other hinge manufacturer in the world, all the several and many part numbers, too many to remember. Most don't make a hinge that's got that swag on it for a 3 degree, and a downside of it actually would be, you know, they're going to be handed. So, you know, you're going to do this or you're going to do this. You know, you've got a button tip here with a hole in it. Contractors are not going to want that up at the top of the opening. No one would. So, if you're going to be doing TA4314s, order them handed so that you get that button in the right end of the hinge. But you're ordering the door handed. The frame is handed. The closer may be handed. The exit device may be handed. The lock could be handed. Why not order the hinges handed? Everything else on the opening is kind of handed anyway. And when you send those hinges for that opening, you're good. It's going to make you tag it, because if you've got 5 doors, 2 lefts, and 3 rights, now you're tagging hinge boxes. And it could be the only thing that you're tagging, because you've got, you know, non-handed closers and exit devices. But at the end of the day, if we're striving to do it the best way we can, if we can introduce complexity into our workflow at no additional cost to ourselves, I take that to be, if you can make yourself better and it doesn't cost you anything, do it that way. Order the hinges handed. It doesn't cost. I don't mean cost. I mean, if there's not an expenditure of additional energies, if you can elevate what you're doing, go ahead and elevate it. In my opinion, even though it's micro, you're elevating by ordering beveled edge hinges, and we've demonstrated the actual difference why, and then the original question whether or not to bevel the style of a door. Anyway, any questions on this or anything else hardware related, please feel free to reach out to me. My name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. Thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.